Advisory Committee to order. I want to welcome everyone here. And we're going to start off by approving the minutes from our last meeting, which was September 18th, 2014. You have a copy of those minutes in front of you. If you would just take a few minutes to review them and see if it's correct or you have any corrections or additions that need to be made. Are there any questions or additions or corrections to the minutes? Armstrong, okay, we'll make that correction. Any other corrections? Thank you, Brian. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes as corrected? Thank you, John. A second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes and our minutes are approved as corrected for our September 18th meeting. We want to move on to the subcommittee work sessions, and Margaret wanted to review the list of subcommittees we have. We got several emails. Some of you who were not here the last time asked to join several committees. So Margaret's going to review those, and then the information she had, or if you're not on a committee and want to be on more than one, we certainly encourage you to be. And we'll go over that right now. Thank you, Margaret.
Okay. So let's start out with the common nursing application. If you can actually reference the minutes, and it indicates Christy Urban, Diane McCormick, Melinda Carroll, Nydia Ariano, Hassan, John Slaughter, and Lee Williams, Chair. Are there any other additions to this committee? Common graduation application, Connie Garrick, Diane McCormick, Margaret Deckent, and Catherine Ruchette Herdman as chair. Okay. Okay. Then the annual Apply Texas Workshop, Nydia Ariano Hassan, Lee Williams, Brian Armstrong, Melinda Carroll, Nikki Kochi, Elizabeth Garza, and Margaret Deckent. Elizabeth and I will be co-chairing Apply Texas. So I believe I've had two additions, Melissa Gallion and Jamie Hansard.
Okay.
Okay. Excuse me. The Common Scholarship application. Myself, Margaret Deckent, Nikki Kochi, Catherine Ruchette Herdman, and Melinda Carroll. Is that correct? Or
Pilar,
Yes. She can be part of a committee.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually in rules that, it's in rules that you encourage non-members to participate in the subcommittees. So that's, encourage others.
I think Melinda had an addition.
Oh, Melinda, you did?
Pilar had
that's
emailed,
right.
and then David Jimenez, who's on the Applied Texas Advisory Committee. And then I have a few others based on a survey that I've submitted. Rita Wilson, I don't know if you want those now or if you would like those after.
We can
And
go
then,
ahead and take it now.
Rochelle Barron and Rebecca Lothringer.
For Counselor Suite, I believe Cassandra Huachica Chavez.
Cassandra is no longer going to be able to serve with the committee because she's taken a new position out of the state. And UTEP has submitted Edgar Palacio as her replacement on the committee. That's going through the process of approval right now.
So for now, and pending approval, and we don't know which committee he might want to serve on, but we have Lee Williams, Pilar Janis, and Brian Armstrong, Chair for Counselor Suite. Is there anyone else? The General Apply Texas application, Connie Garrett, Melinda Carroll, Margaret Decken, Elizabeth Garza, Christy Urban, Susan Kearns, Nithya Rino, Hassan, and Cassandra Lachica Chavez had been serving as chair. We will need to appoint another chair or ask for someone to be chair of the General Apply Texas application.
I'd like to serve on that committee as well.
Yes, okay. Margaret,
I'd like to be on that committee as well.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to be on that committee as well.
Get her also.
Joy, yes. Mm-hmm. We have the Apply Texas Technical Committee, Susan Kearns, Brian Armstrong, John Slaughter, and Melinda Carroll, Chair.
Sheila Gray from Texas Tech has volunteered for that committee as well.
And I believe Candace Appleton Kuntz from TCU also, based on feedback received in our email.
Were we all copied on those emails? On
believe
that
so.
particular email? Okay, so I should have a copy of that. I believe that covers all the subcommittee members at this time. We are going to, we don't adjourn.
Just
We
break.
Recess.
Yeah,
Recess.
we take a recess for a period of time, and we are going to divide up into our subgroups, and many of us are serving on multiple subgroups, so that means that we will have to rotate from one group to the next in order to accomplish our goals today. We will recess until, what time do you think, Rebecca?
I wonder if we want to divide in half like the last time, do half the committee meetings, and maybe break for like an hour at least, and do 30 minutes with each one.
I would say.
Oh, yeah.
How about an hour?
Okay,
And then
9:30, so like at 11:30, we'll come back.
Okay.
Okay,
that sounds.
so, okay, let's
And we have 5 tables
set up.
now, but if we need more, and
I think that'll do it. I think what we'll do is we'll meet on half the committees for 1 hour, and then the other half of the committees for another hour to give us the opportunity and to be able to get ourselves organized. I know that Tim would certainly like to hear something today about at least what our thoughts are, even if they're not final, the direction we're going in and some of the changes we'd like to make. You'd be okay if we finalized them in January?
Yeah,
Even if we,
good idea,
it-
so we can do research and
Right.
figure out.
right, so this will give us an opportunity to start thinking about, changes that we would like to be considered and see what the tech team can do for us. So it's almost 9:20, so we'll recess till about 11:20. We'll have an hour for each group of meetings. And I guess we can meet on the 1, 2, 3, maybe on the first 4, Common Nursing, Common Grad, Annual Applied Texas Workshop, and Common Scholarship Application from 9:20 to 10:20. And then at 10:20 to 11:20, we'll meet on the Counselor Suite, General Applied Texas Application, and the Applied Texas Technical, because I think we had a lot of people on the General Applied Texas, and so that gives people who are on the other committee time to really meet and discuss information and where you want to go to next or what other steps you may want to take as we move forward. So we'll just recess right now, and we can, tables have been set up for us. We can kind of stake a table, the chairs, and then let us know where they're at so we can join them. So we'll recess right now. We'll be back at 11:22 for the meeting.
And just one housekeeping item, your lunch. Please, I'm sorry, just one housekeeping item. Just if you haven't paid for your lunch already, please, you can submit your money to Rhonda Hernandez.
put it in the envelope and she'll pick it up.
Do you want me to let them know about this also? There's some information.
Oh, yeah, in the packet?
Yes, and you have information in your packets. The tech team reporting to us some of the priorities that have been brought up in the past that maybe we haven't addressed. So as you work with your committee, you may want to look through these also, which is good information, and thank you, Tim and your team, for getting this together for us. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we're at, some of the things that were discussed last year but didn't make it to the priority list. So as you meet with your groups, you may want to review this information that was provided to us. I think it might be helpful in moving forward.
I have one last thing, sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
The Graduate Application Subcommittee, we met on Friday via conference call, so that committee will not meet this morning. I have a committee report already.
Oh, that's good. That gives us still 3 committees, would be Common Nursing, Annual Applied Texas Workshop, and Common Scholarship Application, then that'll meet right now from 9:20 to 10:20. Thank you.
And we should probably update it should be Common Graduate Application,
Oh, yes.
graduation.
Thank you for
Although a
that.
common graduation application would be good too.
We'll take that one, too.
I actually have additional subcommittee members that I need to add to your list, but I'll do that for
Okay.
you later.
Okay. Thank you. So I think now we're ready to recess, and if those 3 committees can kind of set up in the back and just wave and let us know where you're at, and we'll join those groups.
And if you need to move tables around, we'll help you with that. If your group is larger than the tables available, those tables are easily moved, so we'll help you with that.
Is now returning from recess. The next order of business on the agenda is to discuss and consider all subcommittee reports. We will begin with the common nursing application and ask the chair to please give us an update on their discussion.
Good afternoon. We had a very good discussion today in our common nursing application meeting. Additionally, I did attend the hot topic session at TACRO this past year and spoke with a number of the health occupations and nursing committee members that were at the hot topic session, and they seemed excited about the opportunity to move to the Apply Texas application. They did, however, want to make sure that the application itself had the ability to upload documents, and they liked the opportunity for it to be able to be imported in from Apply Texas to their student information system. So that hot topic session, I think it was very productive. Also got a couple of people who will be interested in serving in the committee as well, so or the subcommittee. Today we discussed with the Apply Texas technical team about really researching the feasibility of uploading documents. That's one of the things that most of the health occupations committee, well, not committee, but people want the Apply Texas application to be able to do. So the Apply Texas technical team is going to go out and kind of get us some cost of how much it would cost to upload the documents, not just for the common application, but also for the general application as well, since they're going out to get some bids on that. I think that that's going to determine how we move forward in this. I don't think this is going to be a short process. I think that if we're going to do it, we need to do it right, and we need to be able to provide the people who are going to get the application, which would be the nursing people, the best that they can have. I personally think that our system should be better than the CAS system, and I think we have the ability to do that, but I don't think it's going to be something that just happens overnight. Additionally, after we get back the results of how much it's going to cost to upload documents, we're then going to survey some of the nursing deans to really get some application questions to what would go on the application. And now we met with them back in February, and we know that there was some information collected, and we're researching that information as well to also add that to our committee discussion. But again, a very good discussion about how we move forward, and we think that our first step with moving forward is to get the pricing of uploading documents.
Thank you, Lee. Now we'd like to hear from the Common Graduate Application Chair, Michelle Walker.
Thank you. The Graduate Application Subcommittee met Friday, November 7th via conference call. We had quite a number of schools represented and committee members in attendance, and we have a list of recommendations that we'd like to present to the committee for consideration. Would you like me to read those, or okay, I'll provide you a written copy as well. But one is to add organization to the references for the grad and international grad app. That's a recommendation. The second thing we discussed was whether or not the high school question could be removed. It was determined that to remove that question may affect the residency model and the calculation of whether or not a student is a resident or not. And so the recommendation is that that question be removed from just the International Graduate app. We do not recommend removing it from the graduate app for residency purposes and for the purpose that there are schools who are using that in some of their decision process. Some institutions would like to make the educational ladder mandatory. However, it was noted that the educational ladder is optional. So in a sense, it is we already have the ability to display it or not display it, and that would be sufficient. So there's no recommendation or new recommendation with that. We discussed the ability to provide a pick list of countries when an applicant has to manually fill in the institution they're attending. and that country field be audited. In essence, that field be required. That will give more information to the school, receiving school, concerning where the student is in school. And so that is a recommendation for action. We also talked about the ability to choose to receive undergrad and grad apps in separate transmission files. One of the schools represented would like to have the graduate apps transmitted multiple times a day, and the undergraduate portion of that school does not want multiple transmissions. So separating those two into two different transmissions or feeds would allow some flexibility there. Allow 2 fee postings, a regular fee and a late fee. There was no strong advocacy for that item, just something that was presented. So no recommendation with that either. Another item was allow payment options to be determined by app level. We were talking undergrad versus grad. However, in further discussion, it may be more feasible to implement this in terms of app type instead of just level. And so, because some of the different application types will allow maybe a check, and one may not allow you to provide a check as payment, so they wanted the option to be specific. Another was a desire for the Apply Texas Logic to perform an audit check to ensure that the graduate applicant has indicated they will receive a bachelor's degree prior to enrolling in grad school. However, the recommendation was that schools could use special messaging by app type to verify the bachelor's degree, so no changes recommended. Also, a desire for a published checklist or manual for making Apply Texas updates every year, kind of a user's manual. One issue that was brought forward was that the optional modules have to be reset every year. And if you forget to go back and go to the executive menu and set your optional modules, you may start out with less than what you intended in your application. Somebody made that error. Consider a transient app type for grad level. Reasons that the requirements are different than the other app type. There's also a recommendation that the graduate level provide a non-degree seeking a non-degree seeking app and a readmit app. So there's several different recommendations for different app types. Currently, grad only has one, and it's just the straight admission. And then finally, make the question concerning the ultimate degree a student intends to pursue optional for display in the application. Apparently, that's causing some confusion amongst students, but that question is being used by a number of schools, so the recommendation is simply to allow the school to choose whether or not they display that. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Elizabeth Garza will now report on the annual Apply Texas Workshop Subcommittee.
We also had a very good meeting, and one of the first things we tackled was a discussion. Some of the discussion that's been going on is the possibility of merging the Apply Texas and Speedy workshops with the issues meetings that occur in July. And we decided that would not be possible for a few years because TACRO has already made a commitment with the hotel, a 3-year commitment with them, and so we won't be able to do it this time, or really for the next 2 years beyond this year. But we did have a good discussion that one of the things that we could do was to ensure that the agendas were distinct and not duplicated. And another suggestion that was made is that we work diligently to send out the agenda earlier so that the staff has an opportunity, and particularly directors, to determine which of their staff need to attend which of the sessions and can make that decision ahead of time. We have sent out a question to one of the TACRO committees to determine which date they've already scheduled for the speedy workshop, which is always the day before and falls in line with the Apply Texas meeting. So we talked about some of the tasks that needed to be done, but we also went through the agenda and reconfigured it that we thought was a better way of handling the day. We pretty much kept it the same. We concluded that the most important thing we needed to do was to ensure that the speedy day was actually the technical day, and that the sessions that we covered on the Apply Texas Day be more the functional users type meetings or sessions that we have. So we're going to continue working with TACRO and the subcommittee to ensure that we move forward in planning the agenda. So we're hoping that by our next meeting we can have dates and more specific information that we can start informing people about. And I don't know if anybody wanted to add anything that I might have left out.
I think you covered it. Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. Our next report is from the Common Scholarship application. Melinda Carroll, Chair.
Thank you. I handed out during the TACRO Waco conference during the Apply Texas session. The first thing that we had discussed in the last advisory meeting was to survey the membership, and just an initial effort in doing so, we handed out a survey basically asking general questions to determine whether or not institutions are currently utilizing the scholarship application, or if they are not currently using it, what are they using, or would they be interested in using that application or serving on this subcommittee. I did. There were 75 roughly people attending that particular presentation, where Elizabeth and Michelle and myself presented, and there were from that there were 18 institutions or individuals from institutions that filled out the survey. 10 were community colleges and 8 were universities. Currently, based on this survey, not going by Apply Texas information, based on the survey, there's 5 institutions using the scholarship application. 2 are community colleges and 3 are universities, based on the feedback that I received. The general questions, again, were, are they interested in serving on the committee, along with contact information? Are you currently using the scholarship application? If yes, any issues? We asked them to list that. If no, why are you not currently using the scholarship application? And the last question was basically trying to determine what those institutions were using. So that was some feedback that today we met, David and I. We didn't meet as a large group because there was some conflict steering with the other sessions that were going on, but had considered sending this out to a larger population, whether it be through the TACRO listserv, or if there's a listserv through Apply Texas, that we could reach out to more users or even ask additional questions. Pilar mentioned about some issues that they're currently seeing at the high school level, to try and incorporate that within this particular subcommittee. So that's kind of where we are right now. I would, if we do send out a survey, whether it be through SurveyMonkey, I would, if you have additional questions or tweaks to questions that you might want to include, change, if you can provide those to me, I would like to try and send that out prior to our next advisory committee meeting. And that's where we are. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Melinda. Our Counselor Suite Subcommittee update will be from Brian Armstrong, Chair.
Thank you. We had a very good subcommittee meeting also. We started out by talking about a survey that was sent out a few weeks ago up through last week to Houston area and Dallas area counselors about what they are currently doing with the suite. Were they aware of it? Questions about user friendliness and feasibility and things to grow, build upon for future years. And we surveyed 200 counselors in the Houston and Dallas area. We got about 40 to respond, and A majority of them are using the counselor suite. A small number are currently not using the suite, so we've got some work to do still across the state. And of course, that was just Dallas and Houston. We still want to get a list of the entire state, probably through the TCA, to find out how many more counselors are using it and how many are not, and how can we better promote the counselor suite throughout the state of Texas. So that was one thing that we left out, was working better with TCA, and we had talked about their having their annual meeting in February. So it's quite possible that some of the subcommittee members will travel to that meeting and possibly host a presentation on training session on how to use the counselor suite, how to get access, provide thoughts and comments on what they like about it, what they don't like about it. And then inviting them to the Apply Texas conference in June to share their findings with us, and then we could have a better dialogue between the two groups, since that's the audits we're going for through the council suite is the TCA. So that was a plan that we want to put into action over the next couple of months, is to get a better communication plan with the TCA and with the Texas area counselors for their meeting, and then possibly setting up a booth where we could have live demos. As counselors walked by, they could stop by and get a demonstration on how to use the counselor suite, ask questions, perhaps find out who their coordinator is for TEA, or have a communication plan with the coordinator to know what to expect when they do submit a request for access to the counselor suite, putting up flyers and posters to promote the counselor suite through their conference and then throughout the state. And then for future meetings, we talked about ensuring the security and access, so that we don't open up a Pandora's box where we're just giving information without knowing who's accessing it and who should be accessing the information. Some of the data from the survey asked about how can counselors learn which students had been admitted into schools, how could they get a report. So we had David from the technical team, we share with him ideas about maybe through T-Rex, being able, maybe once a year, being able to provide a list of students from our institutions that had been admitted, so that counselors could then see applications, then could follow up sometime between February and April on admission, so they could just better track their students from start to finish. And then having a process and a communication plan with the region coordinators for TEA, so that we understand from them what time frames counselors can expect to get information back. Right now, they send an email to their coordinator, but it's not really clear the time frame on when they're going to get a response back, what process is in place. So if we could put up something like online PDA PowerPoints or things like that, we could PDF PowerPoints. We'd be able to put information so that counselors would know what to expect and when to expect it from their coordinator. And that's all that we talked about for this session. We'll give a more detailed update in our January meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next report is from the General Apply Texas Application Subcommittee. We elected a new chair, and we would like to... I'm sorry, the new chair?
No, that's fine.
I'm sorry, is Melissa Gallion, and she's going to provide a report.
Okay. I was going to say that we also elected co-chairs.
Oh, I'm sorry, and
Michelle Walker
we
from
did
Texas A&M.
elect a co-chair, Michelle Walker as well.
Right. And we began our meeting by doing that, and then continued with numerous, and I do mean numerous, issues and recommendations that might be brought forward. And while looking at those recommendations, with Tim sitting there, we were able to label those as major projects or smaller projects that might be continued with ease. And these were numerous, and they included things like data extraction issues for private schools, concentrations that might be added to the undergraduate app, visa choice recommendations for all of the applications, multiple sessions within the applications, or I'm sorry, multiple sessions within the semesters. We talked about additional text and wording to prevent students from submitting multiple times, adding readmit to the graduate application, and other admission types to the two-year application. And then we talked about is it our job, and how do we communicate what we're doing here as a committee, as an Applied Texas committee, to the TACRO, maybe the TACRO listserv or different members. We know that the minutes are published on the coordinating website, but maybe people don't always know when they should go look at that or when it might be available. And I think that's a question that many of us have been asked in the past. And then, of course, all of the recommendations that Michelle just read, we discussed those as well, which kind of brought us to this point of shock and awe, if you will, because we are called the General Apply Texas Committee, and what we realized is that we crossed application types and committee types, and we found ourselves doing the things that maybe this greater committee should be doing, or that hopefully this greater committee is going to do, but for a second time today. And, the word general is not usually used in subcommittee. And so we have some really, really recommendations, and mainly just because we want to take the commonness back to the core, or back to this group, and maybe take the commonness out of our committee. So with that said, Melinda Carroll is going to add on to our report today, and she's going to speak more in depth on behalf of the committee.
Okay, thank you very much. Part of the recommendation is going to come later on future meeting dates, but it is kind of a good segue into our next subcommittee that is currently listed as the Applied Texas Technical Subcommittee that we created. I'm the chair for. However, in our discussion as we were meeting, it became very evident that many of us were on both of those committees or on another committee, that possibly maybe we should rethink the Apply Texas Subcommittee and actually have that as part of the general Apply Texas Application Committee, because that is going to involve not only the back end, the technical. I received some feedback. Well, I thought it was going to be more of the technical, in programming and things like that, but also it's going to involve that, but it's also going to involve the functional pieces. What I mean by functional, at least in my mind, is the training tools that we have available to new people, current people, or high school counselors, things like that. I think that's what we need to be charged with within the general Apply Texas application, or who we are right now as the whole committee. I think we need to be involved in that as a entire Apply Texas Advisory Committee, rather than having a subsect or a subcommittee that is talking about those whenever we all have, again, like we discussed last time, good training tools. We may have some new people on this committee, or not new to their profession or the profession, but maybe new to, this may be a refresher for many of them. I know there's some in the room that this is a refresher, and I think that's why the technical pieces need to be technical and functional. We need to discuss as a larger group rather than right now we currently have four to five people on the technical committee, but still get those recommendations from people that are not on the advisory committee, because we did receive feedback from institutions that are not currently on this committee, but those recommendations, if they're wanting to provide that for the technical side of the house, could be vetted through the general Apply Texas application, if we still have a subcommittee, or just in having our contact information available to everyone, or our colleagues across the state. So what my recommendation is not only the general Apply Texas application subcommittee, but also the technical would become more of a part of the general group rather than a subcommittee, because there were, Brian was involved, many of us were involved in other discussions while the larger group was, larger subcommittee was meeting. So my recommendation would bring those types of conversations back, have them consolidated prior to our meeting for Tim, but have it actually as a large group.
Melinda, did your current update also include your Apply Texas Technical?
Yes.
Did that update as well?
Yes, because we did not meet, and I apologize. I do that. I just apologize for things that I don't need to apologize for. But I just want to do due diligence for everyone in the room and those that are not here. So yes, we did not meet as a Apply Texas Technical Committee. And as we were thinking, or as I was thinking, and as we were talking, it just seemed like the best move is to consolidate that a bit and have that particular subcommittee as part, either no longer to dismantle that or whatever the appropriate word is, or have it a part of just the general Apply Texas application so we can have discussions. Thank you.
And Melissa, have you concluded your report, or do you have
I just want to
additional?
add another part of our discussion as we talked about about our purpose. We in the fact that some people couldn't meet with other committees. We talked about going back to a different format where we had a 2-day meeting or a day-and-a-half meeting, so that we could come in one day and do subcommittees and then be prepared and meet with various subcommittees, and that might not be till the afternoon of it one day and then through 2 or 3 o'clock the next day. So it's still a one-night trip, but it we'll get a little bit more done that way.
Okay.
And we would like for the whole committee to talk about that later if they could.
So we have had the General Apply Texas Application Subcommittee report, and we've also had an Apply Texas Technical Subcommittee report, and we will discuss the recommendation further later on in the agenda under discussion of future agenda items and next meeting date. So we will go into more detail at that time, and then we'll open it up for discussion for the rest of the advisory committee to make comments. Our next agenda item is a report from our technical team, and Dr. Tim Brace will give us that report.
And before I did that, just, I guess, a question of process. Are we going to discuss the requests or either before lunch on the one I've got?
Okay, I'm sorry. Is there anything that we need to review and vote on?
I guess if I can.
Yes.
Questions.
Okay.
So I think when I was writing down some of the grad app things, Michelle, I wasn't sure if there were some things you talked about that you didn't want to go forward with. I wrote down most of the things here. Want necessarily. I have adding organization to the references, removing the high school question from the International Grad App, not found and make it required if it's used. Sending the undergrad and grad apps separately, possibly with looking into multiple. Allow payment option by app type. Optional modules have to be reset every year, so some set of, I don't know.
Yeah, a checklist.
Okay, and then
my voice is usually loud enough. Non-degree seeking and readmit app types, and making the ultimate degree question optional. Are all those being brought forward as for things to discuss or look into for the team?
Yes, those are potential items for consideration.
Okay. Can I go ahead with a couple other things? With regard to nursing, there were a couple things I heard. We can certainly price out some things. One of the questions was on if you want to look at upload documents, what documents are you looking at? What documents are we talking about? And the reason, go ahead.
In terms of like their recommendation letters, their personal statements, their shot records, all of that kind of things. We went out to CAS today as well, and I think that the requirement they had out there was about like you could upload roughly around 5 documents. So, and they're not large documents. It would mainly be, recommendation letters, and the shot record maybe about 3 or 4 pages. But you scan that in and then you would upload it.
Okay. And I guess my comment on that, we can certainly price out what uploading documents would be. One is delivering that to the SIS would be interesting because they're not upload. We send EDI, so I'm not sure how other vendor products that upload how they deliver, or if they do. We'd have to look into that. The other thing is, we at least have never in the past delivered supplemental documentation to the application. That's not what Apply Texas has been in the past. Again, we can evolve into whatever creature you want for the future, but our legislation was we're an application delivery service, not a delivery of supplemental documents like shot records and letters of recommendation. To this point, we've never done that. That is more. I don't know whether those documents, and maybe somebody who takes other applications can talk to this, but I think I know the Common App farms out a date to some other vendor to manage a database. And on some of these apps, you wouldn't actually have the document delivered to the SIS. You would go somewhere to look at it, which is easier in some ways, because I don't think you could. I don't know how you could we couldn't send a PDF through EDI, so we'd have to look at some other way. My guess would be those documents are probably not they may be downloadable by the local person, and then they put them on in their SIS some way. I'd have to look into that.
Well, I think their whole thing in the medical field is they're primarily, a lot of them are using paper already. So if they're going to move from the paper system to the electronic system, they want to be able to have that student file all in one location. And that's kind of, I think, their argument. The way the CAS system works is, and I could be completely wrong, but I think all of that's done on the actual system. So like you would log in, and then you would see those applicants, and then with that applicant's information, all of their stuff would be attached.
And so that might include the application itself.
Correct.
Yeah. There'd be one central location. Instead of sending the apps to the SIS, you would basically bring all the apps into one place, and then people from the college or university would come to that place to review.
Right.
And that's really different from what we do. That's all I'll say at this point. We can certainly do research.
Just want to, I see where this could overlap though with the counselor suite on transcripts and counselor recommendations, those types of things. I mean, a counselor suite to me, that's what I was thinking. That's what it was, is where they can log in, especially schools that have Naviance, which is a pretty prominent in most of the high schools. And they just upload their documents, so they already have the PDFs. It's just a transmission system that sends it to another system, and then you can go down and download it that way. Just something to throw out there.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Pilar, about the counselor suite, what it does?
The counselor suite, if they use Naviance, it's different. In the counselor suite, the information they can just see are the students, where they have applied to, and if they've done the FAFSA, if they view the FAFSA information, and if it's completed, or the Apply Texas, if they're on page 8, page 9, or completely submitted. And they can see a list of the colleges they've applied to. But the Naviance is a completely different system. I know because in Brownsville, St. Joseph Academy uses Naviance. And so that's how they send their transcripts. We're finalizing, because we're looking at vendors to be able to do that. They're saying that they could provide a better service for us to send them electronically. But the counselor suite is completely different from that.
So I guess with regard to the nursing app, then, as far as how you actually want to move forward this year, if we want to make progress, one of the things the technical team or Apply Texas needs is, what do you want on the app? So how would we move forward with kind of questions? Is it a clone of an existing app with some questions changed, or?
They're at the coordinating board.
Excuse me?
There's like 38 applications on file already.
Okay.
Nursing schools have already submitted their applications. So I think that we would have to go through that and try to come up with a generalized application from all the different pools of information from people who have already submitted their apps.
They've submitted what they use.
Correct.
Okay. That makes sense. So
I just don't want to. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that, I mean, if we're just going to do an application for them, they can just continue to use the paper. because it's not going to be a system that's going to improve their system, because all they're going to do is do with the same thing that Applied Texas does right now, and that's go out, complete the application, you import it into your system, but then you still have all these supporting documents and you don't really have a place to house them unless they put them in a folder like most of the nursing programs do. So I think that the whole sell of the idea is, hey, we have one-stop shop for you. The people apply, they upload their applications. And I mean, it may be a thing where it does cost them a little bit more money, but I think that if the system's done correctly, I think that it could benefit the state. I think it could benefit the whole health community within the state of Texas. Another idea, I think when originally they came up with it, David, I believe from the Applied Texas team, was saying that they wanted to be able to track, where people were going. Well, you didn't get accepted to this school. Well, maybe your application is still on file. Maybe we can send you over here. Maybe they have an opening in this program. So I don't want to not spend a lot of time on it and doing it right. So if that means that it's a 2-year project, then we make it a 2-year project, but we do it with the intention of making it a good system.
I do have to say that we have looked at Nursing CAS as well, and Nursing CAS is much bigger than just an application service. It is a processing service. They are actually processing the transcripts on behalf of these nursing schools, calculating GPAs, providing a means for the school to post decisions. So it's, I think the bigger question is that the role of Applied Texas? It has not been historically, but it doesn't mean that it can't be in the future. But it is providing a whole lot more functionality than simply an application service. Naviance as well. Naviance is not just a high school transcript service. Naviance is providing more services than just the transmission of a transcript from them to a higher education institution. It allows students to upload letters of rec, which goes beyond the typical scope. It allows a lot of, apparently it has some reports and some data mining that's being done on behalf of the counselors, which is making it very attractive. And I think that's why T-REX is having a hard time competing with that, because T-REX its role was to send via the national standard in electronic format, EDI format, high school information. I will say from a large school, getting PDFs is not ideal for us. It is very, very labor intensive. We would much rather have data that we can load directly into our system than to have PDFs that we can download, especially if we have to go get them. Then that's another employee or two. And then you have to figure out how you're going to get that PDF into your imaging system without having to print it. So there are a lot of functionalities that would have to occur. Even if Applied Texas provided what Nursing CAS does, those schools still would have to then find a way to get those documents into their imaging system in order to keep them for their admitted students. So
I think that the idea was not necessarily to replicate CAS, but is to provide schools who are not using an electronic system some type of system that would be an improvement over paper and pencil. So it wasn't necessarily because you're correct, Michelle, that's much, much, much more than just application processing. It's a whole service system. And the idea was that having a common nursing application would be something that was more electronic for some of the things that Lee said, that a student would have the opportunity to see where there were other options available, but not necessarily to replicate the system, because anyone who's in CAS knows that the student has to pay for that application. And the idea, I think, was to have something that was not going to be at any cost to the student.
I know that on T-REX, it's free. I know our district is looking at different vendors, but they all cost money, and everything is always about what costs money and what doesn't. And T-Rex is free, so a lot of the districts choose to go with T-Rex. But the students, I know when they do the UT application, when they're through, they go to that portal and they're able to upload whatever information they're able to upload, any extended resume or letters of rec. But again, that's a system through UT Austin.
I think an important, that Elizabeth just said, one of the, as far as I understand, and I was not in the room when these discussions were made, part of the genesis of this was that Apply Texas allows for someone easily to apply to multiple institutions, and that was kind of what was behind some of this as well, was to have a common application where someone could apply to multiple places relatively easily. I think at some point there was even some discussion of, could the system somehow know, where the places were, what was available, and these kinds of things, and that would be an add-on. But that was at least the origin. A lot of this, as far as I understood it, was because it was for that, which a new application would fulfill that outside of the other discussion about a fully functional review system.
Another thing I think we should be aware of is there are quite a few academic fields that would love to have this. Our speech and speech pathology and hearing sciences they've come to us and asked for special things, and basically they're forming out, after we accept students to the university, they're forming out the same kind of thing, but to a vendor who deals specifically with that area. And, how specific can we get with different applications?
So I don't know if it needs to go any further. I will proceed with trying to see if I can price out how a couple of different ways of uploading documents, and then we can move from there. I think, as was said, we don't have a particular timeline on this, but I think it sounds like we're talking about, on the one hand, what the functionality is, and on the other hand, what the application would look like. And I'm not sure if we can move on what the application would look like until we decide what functionality there is, and that doesn't seem to be settled yet. If you want me to, I'll move on. See. I think that was mostly what I wanted to talk about. Some of the other things that were brought up, we can just, I guess, what I'd like to do today is to have kind of a general sense of what's wanted, and we're not going to have a final, kind of priority list until January. It would be nice if there were some things that the committee felt like that we could go ahead and get started on, and they're relatively easy. We wouldn't mind knocking some of those out. Some of the things that Michelle brought up are easier than others, and some of them, if the committee as a whole kind of said, well, we will go ahead and do some of these in coordination with Michelle as leadership of that committee. I don't know exactly how the committee would be comfortable signing off on some things before the final priorities meeting, but the team would benefit from being able to go ahead and install some of these. If the group isn't comfortable with that, then we can just do all of our research and have everything lined up to where once we're given final priorities, we'd know exactly what we have to do. We'd do our assessments. So with a lot of these, some of them are major. I only heard 2 or 3 things that looked like they were major issues. And again, for those, probably we would have to come back and say, here's what it would take, but some of them wording changes and some of these things that we already kind of already, that are just minor changes to the things we already have, we could go ahead with, or we don't need to necessarily, but we could wait. We could just say, these will be easy and these are not.
I don't want to speak for the entire Apply Texas Advisory Committee, but I think we would all agree that if there's some easy components to the application that you can address in a swift manner, I think we all agree that we would want to move in that direction.
Okay.
Do we need to take a vote on that, do you know?
Would want to itemize those items. You would need to itemize those items for Tim, and the committee would need to approve them with a vote before he goes forward to do the work.
Okay.
I guess what I would want to know from Tim is, can you give us a list of like what would be the easy ones that you would think that could be done, and then that's something that we could consider instead of us trying to figure out which ones are the easy ones?
Probably. Yeah, I can do that. I guess you want that today.
If you want it today, we want it today.
Yeah, if it's something that you can do today, I think we would all want to do that.
Or Michelle can make it a motion that her recommendations go forward.
So, Michelle, you do have a list. You've provided it to Tim, and you went over that list with the committee earlier in your report. Tim, maybe you can look at that list and determine if those are all.
I can probably guess what's easy. Adding the organization to references is probably pretty easy. Removing the high school question from the International Grad app, maybe easy.
This is from the International Grad app, but not the regular Grad app.
Correct. Just the International Grad.
Yeah.
Providing a pick list of countries.
Probably. I'm not sure. Yeah. Countries coming in and out of existence, but I think we could probably find a current list. That would be a recommended, that would be a required question if they don't find their college in the database. Is that
correct? If they're
what's that
filling
for?
in their
A high school name and it's not in the database, you want to know what country they're.
They're manually inserting the institution name,
Okay.
yes, and we want to know what country.
Okay. This splitting out files is something we're going to need to do some research on. That's not.
Right.
That would involve the NSC, and it involves the receiving institutions, whether they can receive multiple files. So we've dealt with this before, and I mean, we've dealt with the request before, and we've begun to look into it a little bit, and sometimes it'll be easy and sometimes not for people to do this kind of a thing, but it's certainly something we can flesh out.
Well, and I don't know how much support there is for that item amongst other schools. So, it was just something that I said I would bring forward, but I don't know how many schools would really make use of it.
Okay.
Anybody else know if your school would want those separate? See, Christine said yes. Maybe look into how hard or how easy that is. The rest of the items, I'm not sure how easy they would be.
Well, I think if we could get direction from this group to move forward with them as we can, and those things that we discover some hitch in, or we want to come back to the committee and say, this is more complicated than we thought, or we need some more direction, that we could do that. But if it looks fairly straightforward and we think we understand what's being asked for, I guess I would ask maybe if we could, we could bring in the co-chairs and Michelle if there were any questions, follow-up questions we needed, which always happen. Do you want this? Do you want this in this case? What if this happens? It's not a hold-up, but it's just a question that we asked for. How would you want us to handle that? Would be a question for the group.
Okay, are there any objections? Okay. Yes, Jane.
If I may ask just a general question, and remember this is my first meeting. The list that was provided before the meeting, these things that came up today, are we talking about the same kind of process?
Yes and no. So that's your confusion's correct. The part of this list, if you see number 2, the priorities list, that's what's decided in January at the meeting. So that's the final decision of the of this committee of what they want the team to have accomplished and in production by August 1st of next year, and in the order of priority, so that we try to get to everything, but we're more committed to number 1 than to number 15. And that's what that is. And then these other things are things for discussion, to seed discussion with the group, and maybe if there's some low-hanging fruit and we get agreement that, yeah, we'd like you to make this textual change to this question, and that's non-controversial and trivial on our end, then we go ahead and do it and not wait for it to be included in priorities in January so that the committee's spending its time on more meaty things. Does that make sense as an answer?
It certainly helps. The rest of the items on here are in an organized way as opposed to being any kind of priority for the other items.
You mean the suggestions? Yeah, those are mostly things I'm going to talk about in the tech update, but they're just I was just bringing people's attention to some things that I wanted to mention that we've talked about before or dealt with since August 1st.
How it is wondering how it's integrated into the big list. Rebecca was saying, would that be under 1C?
Are you, yeah, 1C, for example, all items from last cycle's priorities list that were not installed, the grad app requests from the subcommittee, right, there were, I don't know how many requests are this year, but last year there were a certain number, we installed a certain number, the rest were postponed or removed, and so I'm sure that many of these were probably in that group, I don't know. They were, yeah.
Most of what's on there was brought from last year, part of the 16.
So if the committee wants us to move ahead before January when the priorities are actually made, we can take a look at some of these and see whether we can go ahead and install some if the committee votes for us to go ahead and move ahead, and then we just want, if there was a follow-up questions, could we just do that? Committee can just vet Michelle to speak for it, or I could email the co-chairs or whatever. Okay. And then other things that came up, I don't know if you need them. Some of them were major, like multiple sessions per semester, concentrations, a readmit app within the grad, a shorter app for 2-year schools, other types of apps for 2-year schools like a readmit, preferred name, legal name, new visa types for international apps. We talked about that I think that did not turn out to be anything that was major. The idea was that there were some visa types that aren't in our standard, and that we could maybe add. Who was it that was talking about that? Could maybe speak to that better than I can.
We were Melinda from 2-year community college, because the challenges, at least that we currently face at our institution, is we have a single international admission advisor, and our primary application is the Applied Texas application, including for our international students that we do have that aren't just concurrently enrolled with another institution, and we're having to send additional correspondence where it's delaying a little bit of the feedback that we're providing to the student to determine what type of visa that they are on. If they are on a visa that doesn't necessarily allow them to domicile in the state. So that was in response to that particular question, and we had discussed possibly of me identifying what questions we're referring to and possible updates to those questions, where it would either lend itself to not have to use a custom question or provide additional correspondence with the student. Because right now we're basically sending to our international or possible international students a separate questionnaire that possibly could be incorporated within the application.
And all of these things, when I say we'll do them, it means we'll get a head start on them, and we bring them back to the January thing, and we'd say, okay, because we'd always have the opportunity then to say, well, that isn't really what we meant, or we decided we want to go another way with it. These would be rolled out with the next rollout in August, but we could get a head start on some of them if we felt like that they were things that the committee supported. Sorry, Melissa.
We had also discussed the online students and just trying to let them know that they do not need to choose a visa type, or at least having another type that said J, a different designation for online students only, so that but it's communicating that to the student whichever way we go.
So if the committee's fine with it, that's something we could probably move forward with, and maybe using Melinda and Melissa for feedback on how that would work. Does that seem reasonable?
I think so. So are there any objections to moving forward on some of the recommendations that are a little bit easier to implement than some of the others that we'll be reviewing when we meet back in January? And Jane, I can so see your confusion. I really can. And I think that might get resolved. The confusion may get resolved when we move on to the discussion of future agenda items. That's what we were talking about earlier, that, we meet to discuss general application updates as a subcommittee, but then we have a whole bunch of recommendations coming to us from everywhere, all across the state. So we all collectively get those, and I think that those were some of the ones that Michelle presented today to Tim and to others on the committee, and so that was added to this big list, even though some of it's on there.
Well, part of my angst, and this is again, is that what I'm most familiar with is residency section, and there's a part of statute saying hearing about is adding more questions, but this is for the
Yes, not the, this does not touch residency at all. If it did, we would go directly to you for that and make sure you blessed it. Otherwise, these. I apologize for slowing things down, it just helped. But I can totally, I understand, because I was confused earlier in the subcommittee meeting. So
the other thing is there's a whole long list as well of suggestions that have come, some left over from last year that didn't get addressed, that are more general. They're not grad oriented. And the grad recommendations are not any more or less important than these others either. I would personally like to see them all presented at one time and us able to pick out what's easy from the entire list, and then, discuss what maybe are priorities of the harder things to do, the things that require a lot more time. And that list was provided at the last meeting. I've not seen that list at this meeting, but some of the things in it are pretty simple as well.
I'd like to also say, if I know this is getting a little ahead of the agenda, but if the decision is made to have a longer meeting of this group and move some of the subcommittee groups, I think it takes a considerable amount of the pressure off the team to try to it kind of relieves a lot of the pressure to have you decide today on pretty much anything, and the time can just be spent deliberating what you like and what you don't like. I think from our perspective, if there was just one more meeting before we were told what to do, and it was just a couple of hours because it's an afternoon, there's a lot that's going to come out of that one meeting, and then we're into the next year before we get started. And so maybe I'm pushing a little too hard to have you, and you're uncomfortable saying go ahead and do that. And I think some of that pressure can be released if we really have all day to deliberate on the next one, because then a lot more discussion will go on about everything, every individual item, and maybe we can have these lists that are more comprehensive, and then the group will have much more time to deliberate and decide, and that would be fine with me, in which case the request of moving ahead is not such an important thing for us.
So would you like to continue with your official technical
Sure.
team report?
Sure. So you have, everybody should have this, and I think I appreciate y'all sending that out. I think that was a real good idea. I just want to highlight a few things. We've already talked about the item from last cycle's priorities. I gave the priorities list from last year, some things that were completed early, partly because we were late getting to the priorities list due to various things. On number 3 there, I just want to mention some things, and this is kind of closer to being a real tech team report. And there's one thing I want to mention first that's not on here because it just came up recently, which is we approached a couple of schools about 7-day delivery of files instead of our normal just weekday delivery. And so that came about partly because of the heavy load on the system on December 1st. And so we approached A&M about it because they're a major user on that time. They have a major deadline at that time, and they said fine, and so they started doing it. And I believe now we have UT San Antonio and Texas Tech have also decided to do that. And so it's a service that's easy for us. We've talked with the NSC. There's no problem on their end. It's not hard for us to do, and we have a pretty big file on Monday that takes everything from Friday 6 p.m. And it would help us, especially as we get more and more apps, because our apps are up. We're up last year 7 to 8% over the year before. We're brought on some schools, or this year, or some schools that weren't using us that much are using us a lot more. So our apps are continuing to go up, and it would help us with regard to the load on the systems that we use if we could do that. And so I don't know that so really what I'm asking is, does anybody know if there's anybody else, is there anybody else in this group that would be interested in such a thing? And I think maybe we'll ask the community as well. But it's easy for us to do. We've already started it, and it's working fine. And if you are at an institution, you have to be able to, you have to look into your IT and see if they would have any problems with it. But we would like to have more participants in that.
We would at Blinn. We'll participate.
Okay. Okay.
I'm pretty sure Sam Houston can support that as well.
Okay. We'll follow up with you all, of course, and make sure your SISs can handle it. It just kind of, some people don't like it on weekends because depending how they, consume the apps,
Oh,
they.
is that the question? I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I misunderstood what you were
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
I'll totally take that.
Okay. I think they're.
You're saying hold them for 7 days.
Oh, no. We don't want to hold them at all. We are having some, like I said, y'all are interested in Texarkana? Okay. And again, before we actually start sending, we'll have an email to follow up and again, I've already checked with the NSC. If you've got a window, that window stays 7 days. They don't have a problem at all. As soon as they get something, they'll send it. And so we just want to be able to run on Saturday night and Sunday night in addition to all the other nights we run. And that'll mean things won't back up as much over the weekend, and it'll help everyone. And if your systems can handle it, then I think we'd love to have that. So if anybody else wants to, they can email. If you're not sure, you don't want to say anything, just email our help desk, and she'll give you some information. Last year we installed some information on parental information, and I thank Candace for that, and also some of the people at UT Austin who were helpful. And I think after we install something new, it's always nice to go back and say, well, how did that work? What kind of changes you might want to make? I don't know if this is the place to discuss changes you might want, but I just want that to be an item for discussion going forward. That how did that work for you? We found, as we often do, that someone goes, gee, I'd like to have this, and then everybody else goes, well, I don't know if we want it, but go ahead and do it. And then a bunch of people, that's cool. UT Austin uses it too. So just kind of to review it and revisit it after a new functionality is installed is a good thing in general. I don't know. Candace, do you want to say anything?
This was kind of bare bones to what the original request was. So there's still more information we would definitely like to gather from parent information because we're kind of having to piece it together with custom questions still. And I can't speak for public institutions, but from a private institution standpoint, like things that are important to us, are like the email, the highest level of education, which I know we capture that elsewhere, but again, it's just kind of all pieced together. Are they an alum, not an alum, and then employer position, those types of things that we use within our system.
Okay. So I would just suggest that be brought forward next time for discussion, and you probably did last year, but give us an email on what you might be talking about. Going down here, SSN. So, yeah, that's been fun. So, what's the old adage that you must be doing it right if both sides are mad at you. So we as a result of last year, we required SSN. We were getting about 90 to 95% compliance, my understanding, and Rebecca or Jane can maybe fill me in with this if I say this wrong, but part of what was behind this was FAFSA and maybe some coordinating board reporting, and so the request was made and it was voted on to require the SSN for people who had it.
It was the colleges who requested it because we were getting fined by the IRS.
I was going to bring that up next, yeah. So I think that's still happening, and so requiring it resulted in quite a few fake SSNs for people who just find ways through the system. We've audited for some of them, but we can't catch all of them, and so there was kind of some shocks sent through the admissions department, about why are you doing this? We'd rather have nothing than have a bad one. And then so we discussed it with several people. We asked to pull down the requirement, which we did. Then some shocks were sent through the accounting system because of that. Although I don't know, so my guess would be that we probably did get a higher percentage of compliance, but we also got some bad SSNs. And so I don't know, in some of my research at UT Austin, I know people have to give SSNs to get any kind of financial aid. So we're talking about a particular group of people who come in, they matriculate, they don't get financial aid, and they didn't give their SSN on the app. And what do you do with those people? And so it's really for this group to decide. An SSN is not needed to file an application anywhere, but we're certainly. It's a nice service to give to the university to include the SSN when we can. So that's the suggestion. Really is just that if you want us to go back to that, let us know, and we'll do it again.
I kind of like that little happy medium you suggested here about stronger language or a checkbox or pop-up verify that they're refusing. As a happy medium.
And maybe telling them what the downside is
Right, that
of
you're
not
not gonna
putting
get
your
your-
Social Security number in.
Okay.
Well, it used
go
to
ahead.
have, it does have that on there, didn't it?
It has some, it says something about it being, I don't remember exactly what the verb, yeah, it says it's required, right, if you're seeking financial aid. Maybe what we could do with regard to what Margaret just said is, we could run a sweep, I know now, and kind of see what kind of compliance we have, and then we could tighten up the language some and make them say, yes, yes, I really am not giving you my SSN. I realize I'm not. I realize this may hinder, my ability I'm going to have to give it for financial aid anyway. And then we could maybe run another sweep after that and see, did that help? What kind of, but I understand, I did talk to the people in accounting, and I understand what's going on with the IRS and the 1098-Ts and sending out those without SSNs.
There's also the students that do not have a social. I know in our district, we have about close to 300 in the entire district, so seniors.
And also, we heard, this might be a real small group, but we heard from people who wanted to apply. They were up against the deadline. They hadn't gotten their SSN yet, but they were going to have one. They just hadn't received it.
Just as a side note, the two of the other applications that we use, there's a question of, will you be applying for financial aid? If they mark yes, then the SSN is required. If they mark no, then it's optional, like it was before.
So you ask them in the app, right? Just in the app,
for
whether they're going to apply for financial aid.
Right. That's just how the other two apps, that doesn't mean that it has to be that way. Personally, from an admission standpoint, we could care less. We obviously want to help the other departments in the university, but I personally don't think it's something that the application itself should have to handle if it's not hindering the admissions process.
Just keep in mind, though, the 1098-T is not a financial aid issue. It applies to every student that attends. It's their
tuition, yeah.
Yeah, so, and that's where the universities were getting,
that wording needs to be
yeah,
added.
that's where we were getting fined.
Right.
So maybe that's a good happy medium, adding that language then, and just a little checkbox like, I didn't forget, I refuse to put it on there, which is fine. It's not going to penalize them in any way, but at least then we know.
And one final thing I put on there is make sure that you don't ask for an SSN in the custom question, because it's not encrypted when we send those answers.
Does everybody, not just us here, have we sent that out to the whole entire listserv? Because some schools told me at the conference they were very disappointed with us taking the Social Security number off. So I don't know if they went out and maybe they did that. Maybe they made that as a custom question because they wanted to have the Social Security number so bad.
We can do that.
Yeah.
It did go out.
It did go out.
It did? Okay.
No, the email went out to everybody telling them that you were cutting it off, but it didn't tell them that
The
if you
email
put it
said
in a
don't
custom
use
question.
custom
Yeah, because that's
questions.
how I found out about it. And yeah, I think that as us being on the advisory committee, when things like that happen, if we're able to know about it before it goes out to the general population so that we can be able to fight it off and kind of let people know what's going on, because some people know we are on the committee and they come, I'm like, I didn't know anything about it either, because I found out about it when it came out through the general listserv, which was after the fact.
Dealing with online high schools is another thing that I'm mentioning is just starting to happen, and it messes with residency because obviously you've got these places have an address. It's not in the state of Texas often, and so our residency asks questions about whether you've been in the state for the last X amount of time, and it looks like you went to a high school out of state. So we're struggling with that a little bit on the team about how to do it. I don't know how big a deal it is now for you all, but it's something that I think we'll probably have to deal with more as we go along. Now, we all know that, or we should know, that we're not the final arbiter of residency. We gather information, we make suggestions to the schools. I think that's maybe not as well understood as as we'd like it to be understood, because sometimes I hear that we're doing this wrong. Now, if we're suggesting wrong, that's one thing, but sometimes people answer questions in certain ways that head toward residency, and we're not the final arbiter of whether a student is considered a resident or not. But it's just something, I don't know if anybody has dealt with that, and so we have we're thinking about trying to find ways to deal with it. Does anybody on here had dealt with problems with regard to online schools in residency?
We have at Texas A&M, but it defaults to non-resident, which is better than it defaulting to resident. So,
because you're going to look at all those people anyway, right?
well, and they'll call us, I'm sure, if that's
Once they
wrong.
get the tuition
and
bill,
actually, we have an exception report that reports a mismatch, where we've deemed them non-resident, but everything else points to resident. So we'll catch them in this exception report. And so if they're going to go one direction or another, it's going the right way right now.
The next one, we already talked about uploading documents. I think it should be noted that the Common App no longer uploads essays within the application. They are, in some ways, a full service, and they upload letters of rec and things like that. I went online and tried to find some reasons behind that and couldn't. I don't know if TCU use the Common App, right? Yes. I don't know whether if anybody could contact them and find out. I looked for it online, and I have two guesses. One is that I know that document sizes has grown through the years considerably as formatting has gotten more complicated, and I know that they have a vendor that they use for database, and that may have gotten more expensive. The other reason, which might be number one instead of number two, is that you can't control how many words are in it if it's a PDF file. And often they have limits on essays, and you can't enforce that. So now they're using a text box basically the same as we are. And they have a little statement out to the side saying, we're going to strip out formatting, and everybody understands that, so don't worry about it. I think so. I think so, because don't they?
Not from the students.
Oh, okay.
From the students, no.
Okay.
It's only from the teachers and counselors, and they can upload.
And then they go to a central site.
Correct.
For that, yeah.
Yeah. So
it's not part of the app.
Student, and our TCU application is the same way. The student fills out their counselor information, their teacher information, an email goes to them with a link, and then they go to that link and they can upload the files.
Yeah, I think we have that at UT Austin as well. T-REX, this is my final item. We have an automatic transcript request pilot project that we started. It's been in the works for some time, and what this is the student, for those participating in the pilot project, the student has the option upon submission of making a request through the T-REX system to the high school to send a transcript to the college. We have several high schools participating and several colleges. At this point, they're just kind of trickling through. We've had some issues just trying to get the API working with T-REX and keep it working, and it works from some schools better than others. My general sense is that the colleges like this idea more than high schools do. I probably contacted 15 high schools, and we have, 4, I think, participating, and a couple of them are doing Naviance instead, so they're not doing T-REX. Some of the issues on the high school side are, well, the student has to come in anyway. Sometimes they have a fee. Sometimes they have to have their parents sign something, and so it doesn't really save them in the system to get the request via electronic request via T-REX. But my question to you all is, what do you want done with this project? Right now, like I said, we have a few people. I think Blinn is a participant, but right now some of the high schools that Brian's participating, but they're not at this point generating a lot of apps to you. UTEP is participating, A&M. So in Texas Tech, we're getting a few apps through here and there, but we have 3 high schools in El Paso. and one in College Station, and those are the only high schools that are participating, and all the others declined or didn't respond to multiple emails. So I'm not quite sure. Do you want us to just continue to try to increase it a little bit? That doesn't need to be answered today. That's just a report on where we are. That's all I got.
So on the last item, it indicates that this was an initial request by the coordinating board.
Right. I believe this was in partnership with the TEA and not having been there, but at the risk of misstating, I believe that the coordinating board funded an API, a web services from the TEA to Apply Texas. This was several years ago, and we got it up and running this last year between Apply Texas and TEA.
So if there's a decision to discontinue, then should that not come from the coordinating board?
I mean, the committee can say the committee is an advisory committee. The committee can say, we'd like to blow this open for everybody. We'd like to add as we can. We're not interested. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Participate.
I have probably not written any emails in the last 2 or 3 weeks, but I probably sent out multiple emails to about 15 schools over the last several months.
And you're not getting the response.
Right. I got a decline from probably 5 or 6. A couple of them said they were using Naviance. A couple of those just said that I'm interested in participating in the pilot. And we got 4 that said yes, and the others just didn't respond. And I'm sure I sent at least 2 emails to everybody. And I think I'm just assuming the emails, they didn't bounce back, so I think they went to the right people. But some of the people were out until September because of the summer, and I would expect, them to come in. But the question is, one question for committee is how much effort is to be spent by the Apply Texas team in trying to get high schools to participate.
In our district, I had to poll all of the high schools because we were working with T-Rex and looking at vendors or how can we make it better. And I know that from one school to another school, one of the people in our district, the ones that send out the transcripts, are the people in records, our records clerks. And some of them said, I don't really understand that T-Rex. And then in other schools, no, we're sending T-Rex, but only if the student asks us. And, it was from one school to another completely, totally opposite. So we're going to come together to make sure that we are sending them, because a lot of the districts in the Valley are being able to be successful in sending them. One of the things that they said was one of the situations that they're dealing with is that if the test scores are not onto the transcript, then they have to use T-Rex and send an attachment. Sometimes in the process, some of it disappears, and so these are just different issues that we as a district are going to have to look working with T-Rex, and that's what we're looking at. But if we're handling that, and we're the largest district in South Texas, then maybe other districts, and maybe that's why they're a little reluctant. Those are the things that they're having to cross. And again, in our district, we're going to really try to work with T-Rex because that's free versus the vendors that we're looking at. We're looking at each of the campuses would have to absorb 3,000 to 5,000 to whatever the amount is. But those are some of the things that are kind of sort of roadblocks.
And I think if you do end up, I would just ask you, if you do end up with some schools that you do settle on how to use T-Rex and they start using it more and stuff, and if they're willing, either ask them or give me contacts, because if they're willing to participate in this project, then it would help us generate some more testing of what we've set up.
Sure.
And so, Tim, do you want each committee member maybe to contact the high schools that they might have a direct contact with, just to kind of possibly give you some more tests or more schools to pilot
That would be
with?
wonderful. Yeah. I think, if you want to participate, we've got several colleges. Some of the colleges don't have feeder schools that are participating, in this project. We've got Blinn, Bryan High School generates a lot of apps to Blinn, and so we'll get, as we get into that season, we'll get a lot from them. The other schools are all in El Paso, so we're going to get some apps for UT El Paso. But Texas Tech and A&M, they'll get apps because people apply to those schools, but we're not getting a lot of them at this point. And it's not required. The student doesn't have to do it. They can choose to do it.
Thank you so much, Tim, for that report.
I have a
and all
question
that
about
information.
T-Rex, and maybe Tim can help me understand this. Because as I recall, I guess it was through TACRA when the company was vetted for providing the electronic service to the state of Texas. It doesn't seem to me that there's a lot of support for T-Rex technically, and not a lot of support for change with T-Rex, which is driving schools away from its use. Who employs T-Rex in a sense?
It's a TEA. We're in contact, of course, with the technical team. Glenn Shelton has been in this all along, and I believe the year before last, maybe, when we were first getting serious about this on the Applied Texas side, was at the conference and spoke about it. Pilar, you remember that? Yeah. I think that was right. He's a main contact from not just the people who work under the hood.
So is there effort being made to keep up and improve? And I know one of the issues that high schools have is what Pilar brought up, is that they cannot report test scores via T-Rex. And to my knowledge, we don't get attachments when it's transmitted, when the data's transmitted. Or if we do, I mean, we don't do anything with it.
Right.
And I'd like to add to that, I had a high school counselor said that they attached the fee waiver to the T-Rex, and I'm like, I don't get attachments, so I don't know how you would have done that, so.
Yeah, they can attach.
That works.
Because we had the same issue where they said they were attaching the test scores. Yeah. We don't.
This is from Veterans Memorial, our newest and biggest school. Today was the first day I sent records via T-Rex for one student. The student requested that I send her records via T-Rex and specified the college of her choice. I exported student information from eSchool and attached a copy of student transcript and testing card. I handed a copy of the tracking number to the student so she had the information to turn into her admissions advisor. That's one school. That's how it was handled there. I made them all tell me.
Else? Are there any questions? Again, Tim, thank you for that report. We really appreciate all the work that you and your team do for Applied Texas. So next on the agenda is the discussion of our future agenda items and then the next meeting date. We had already set that date for January 26th. However, based on a recommendation that's going to most likely occur in the next few minutes, it's possible that we will move that date to January 27th and have subcommittee meetings on the afternoon of January 26th. But that is open for discussion, and we actually do need to receive a formal recommendation.
Okay, I would like to recommend that there be an update to our meeting structure. to either a day and a half or 2-day meeting, with the either half day or prior day to the advisory committee meeting be for subcommittee reports, with the subcommittees meeting prior to that day. And if the whole committee is unable to come, but at least the chairs can report to that group with their recommendations and what activity has occurred on that either half a day or full day meeting, with the following day being the complete Applied Texas Advisory Committee.
One of the biggest reasons we had for this discussion is that in January, it was part of our general Applied Texas Subcommittee, and in January, we'd like to prioritize and be able to give Tim a list. And that really requires a lot of discussion and the full group having the opportunity to discuss and prioritize and have input. And certainly all of you, as Lee mentioned even earlier, get input from other groups, and which is what our hope is, and other people who know that you're members of the committee, that we're members of the committee. So that would allow us to have a lot of time to go through that list and to discuss it, and to feel confident that everybody had input and that we were able to put the best list possible for Tim and prioritize it in a way that we can make some important and needed changes to the application that all the users would be interested in having.
And this would also give everyone the opportunity, and this was part of the brainstorming, that with the different subcommittees, people may lose part of the discussion, or another thought may come up in doing this different structure, and then also to hear what others have to say, because not only those that are here with us, but maybe there's people out in the field that might email you if they know you're on the committee, even the day of this meeting, that if it's a full day where we're meeting, or if they know you're meeting the day before, they may reach out to you a little bit more. So my recommendation is to meet either for a full day or a half a day on January the 26th, with the advisory committee, full advisory committee meeting being on the Tuesday the 27th.
Yes.
If I may, are you, again, this is asked, are you splitting it up, and then you're going to have
Yes.
committees so everyone can get in on it?
It would give, at least, and maybe I'm incorrectly saying this, it would give the subcommittees a chance to meet prior to that day before, and then have the subcommittees reconvene together as a group prior to say what they had been working on throughout, and if any additional discussion needs to occur, that occur prior to the day of the actual advisory committee meeting. So that way, if there's additional discussion that needs to occur during the subcommittee meetings, or even during the technical, the other discussions that occur, it'll give a little bit more time to that. But it's not really having them separate during, the subcommittees will not separate during the full meeting. It would just be either the half a day if they need to meet, or it could be just the chairs coming in that half a day before to report what the subcommittees had been doing.
You're asking, I think that we're requesting we would break out into different meetings, and if your group wasn't meeting, for example, if the graduate application group meets by phone and don't have the need to meet on Monday, and you're on that committee, you could still come in on Monday if you wanted to sit in on another subcommittee and hear what they're talking about or contribute. So, yes, we would meet as separate subcommittees as necessary. Not all the committees would necessarily have to meet.
With more than one committee.
Right.
Or subcommittee. And part of my question is, how do they do that? suggesting that be done even before?
I would recommend that it happen prior to the two-day meeting. So that way that if there is either surveys that need to be sent out or some, work out in the field or reaching out to others that may be recommended to become part of, it would be prior to either that half a day or full day prior to the advisory committee.
Yeah, I was thinking more of the half day being we all come together that day, and each of the committees has their list of recommendations. And that half day gives us, as a full committee, opportunity to hear all of the recommendations and kind of debate them before the next day when we have to prioritize them, or we would have a little more time to discuss items and decide if they are something that everybody wants or doesn't want. I would recommend the subcommittee meetings being done before January 26th.
Well, on the 26th, we could have it set up so that it would be known what time each subcommittee would report. So if you were on multiple committees, you would plan accordingly. I need to be there all day or half a day, or I can get there at 4 because mine is only showing, starting at 4 to 5, for example. So if we can figure out which subcommittees, the timing for those, then post that, because I would think that we would let the entire state know about these meetings, and if we want to encourage people in the field to come and hear what we're saying or pitch in, that would be times for them to come in and really be a part of the subcommittee part, and then the next day we could formalize all of these discussions, present them without the rushness, pardon the word, but the rushness that we had today, where we felt like we were missing something because we were focusing on one of 2 or 3 committees. So I think giving it a day and a half gives a little bit more breathing room, but it also would allow us to time each subcommittee meeting so that if you were doing more than one, you would know what time you need to be here in Austin for that particular meeting or subcommittee meeting.
'26 and '27.
Yes.
I put in, there wasn't anything scheduled, so I have put in a request for the 27th so that this committee would have the 26th and the 27th. It's still pending, but, nothing else was planned, so it's a good chance that it would go.
Okay, Elizabeth, can you tell us how did you do it last year, where you scheduled the times?
I think last year what we did, every committee that wanted to meet
The day before?
the day before emailed our THECB contact person, and then we had a list of the meetings and just gave them time slots. And then, as Brian suggested, put it out there, and that way everybody knew when the time was, and you came in according to the meetings that you wanted to participate in.
For
So
the
each
counselor
committee
suite-
sent in saying, yeah, our committee's wants to meet on Monday.
For the counselor suite, I'd like to be able to invite some counselors, even from the Austin area, to join in and give real feedback so that we could, not just talk hypothetical, but like, wow, this is some good information. The survey was just for Austin and Dallas, but it didn't touch Austin or anyone statewide that may have wanted to come and share some ideas with us. So that's why I was thinking about having a day where we could publicize that. And then those of you who have team members on your campuses who want to join in and help as a subcommittee, that would give them just a half a day to come instead of a full 2-day or a day and a half to be here, like we do for the June. Some technicals can come early, and then those who are functional can come the next day. Same thing for the January committee meetings. It's a good midway point to get updates on where we are so far, and then to get some good feedback before we begin to plan for April, and then for the things we're doing in the summertime.
You have 7 subcommittees?
6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
And
6,
you're
7,
thinking
7.
about the meeting in half a day? So we're talking about 30.
Or even possibly in the whole day if we had to. If everybody wanted to meet, we already have this room for the day, right? We could have some in the morning and some in the afternoon.
And it was my understanding that you were thinking that some of these subcommittees could be rolled into the others, like the technical
Right.
would be with the
So it'd be
general,
like 6, really.
so that there might not be quite as many subcommittees as previously.
And it really, if, at least for me, it would be, I would want to make sure that we have a conference call depending on, for instance, for the scholarship subcommittee. That way, if there's others that are involved in other sessions or other subcommittees, that they can be sure to hear everything, or to have a voice, and that way there's no loss of discussion. Again, I think that's kind of what or ideas that people might have, or feedback that maybe they've received from people within their institutions.
I think the conference call, if we had to get additional rooms to be able to facilitate that may be more of a challenge for us, just for availability of space and technology.
If there was a conference call, of course, that needed to happen, I would want that to happen prior to January. That way, if there's any work, that way if those people that were involved in the conference call could come for that day prior to our advisory, of course, invite them. But if they can't, that could be their opportunity as far as subcommittee work to do that outside of that 2-day time frame. That, whenever, in regard to that would be something that would happen within our own institutions, where we'd reach out to others in that, if they're able to participate, or if they want to provide feedback, it could be just email correspondence if they're not available. But just working with those that have reached out to us that are interested in being on these subcommittees.
So if I'm seeking clarification, and confirming my understanding is that the coordinating board would work with the chairman, and we would set up a definite schedule for subcommittees and have that posted, maybe with the agenda as part of the agenda, maybe, or as supplemental to the agenda, because the agenda has to go out and be posted on the Texas Register so many days in advance. So those are considerations that we would want, but maybe, and if I'm understanding, you're wanting to get it publicized. So if we could have it pretty structured, more structured than it was maybe today, and very definitive with the timeline of rotation between subcommittees, and those are going to be hard and fast, because you're going to want people to move on. You can't just stop in one committee because you're having a good discussion. And then have a pretty firm schedule, is what I'm saying, and be able to publish that, and then have people here available to facilitate that.
Yes, and I think that would limit some of the anxiety, perhaps, because we all want to have an opportunity to meet and get things done. That way it's a productive meeting, and I think that's kind of what was going on here today. Everybody wanted to make it a productive meeting, but wanted to figure out, is there a better way that maybe we need to be doing that? So yes, we would want more structure.
Okay.
I still have more questions, and the idea would be, when I'm hearing two different things. Talked about having people come here, not been in those discussions, come and participate on talking about having a finished agenda by scenarios for the subcommittee?
I don't think so, because the reason why at least from the scholarship application, trying to get that's not something that, at least in my opinion, we can do just as brainstorming, because I feel like that's what we have been doing with that. I think having allotted time for, and if a committee has met or has done some preparation prior to that day, there would still be that same structure and timing, and that way if you have a time that you want to meet and you're on multiple committees, it will give you that opportunity. But I think they're all very different, where you'd need to do some upfront discussions via phone or however you do some conferencing prior to that time. But you could still, if you determine there's additional need, or even if you feel like you want to invite those people who were on those conference calls to have one last discussion, you would invite them and still have that final discussion that day. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there would be more discussion or decision prior to that day for, at least in my opinion, for the scholarship application, whereas the counselor suite would be bringing in, you could still have up front, you could still possibly have some discussions, conference discussions, if you were able to reach out to several counselors prior to that time. Or I was envisioning people coming if they were able to do so that were interested in serving on the committee, but also do some upfront conference calls prior to that day, where it is more final by the time you get there. That way you have a final report and any tweaking, or if anybody has anything else to bring, you could have that time to do that and then be prepared for the next day to give a committee a briefing, basically, of what you've been working on.
And mine was just an add-on. I mean, if we're going to have more time, then why not have more voices to hear more, information, so that we could give a better response than just an hour to meet, lunch, and then an hour to present. Like I would have had more time to give some thought into what I presented, vetted some things that I was presenting, and not just going off a whim and saying, we just met and here's our results. I would have a little bit more time, and for me, I would have more voices, people, because I'm working with counselors, none of whom are here except for Pilar. So I'd like to have the ability to announce that we will, for at least the counselor suite, but I can imagine that for counselors in general, they may want to know about different things. How is this committee working to better serve them, since they're our customer at the end for the Apply Texas? So how can we better serve them? So I was just adding on that if we're going to have an extra day, we would have the ability to make that an announcement and see if other counselors and our colleagues from around the state would want to join us for a half a day to pitch in their ideas and thoughts on how to better Apply Texas in all the subcommittees, not just the one that I'm chairing.
Because we had an hour today discussion, and all the subcommittees.
I don't think it needs to be half a day.
So
Well, I don't think it needs to be half a day. I think once everyone emails, and if all the subcommittees are going to meet, obviously we would have to maybe be a whole day. We'd have to meet in the morning and afternoon. I think it's just going to depend on the subcommittees and how much time that they actually want. So it may be 2 days. I don't know.
if this is all settled in time to post it in the register, talking about that time,
Right.
Monday, to do what you're talking about in order to know how that we're posting.
Right. That's correct. We probably would want to give, and I don't know if we can make that decision today, but give people a deadline. By this time, we want to know if you're going to have a meeting and how much time you feel you need for your meeting, and then we can kind of play with the time and schedule the meetings in this room, right? Because we could probably have at least 2 meetings going on in this room.
That's what I.
Yeah, that's what I was
on the
thinking.
same floor.
Mm-hmm.
So can we leave here today with a date of when the committee chairs will get back to, I guess, the co-chairs about what time we'll be meeting on the...
Or that, in fact, you're going to meet. Because, I'm kind of like with Jane on this. Some of us are on multiple committees. How are we going to stagger it so that we can all make all those meetings?
Well, maybe we should realign the committees and only have each person on 2 committees.
That's a good idea.
Maybe we need to do that, because that way then you could technically have something in the morning and you could have something
Right.
in the afternoon.
And I was thinking along the same line, but I didn't want to, take myself off of anything, but it appears that, otherwise I don't know how else we can work that out.
Well, then some of the subcommittees are so big that they're not really subcommittees. Like the General Applied Texas is not a subcommittee.
Almost
it's a
this
committee.
whole committee. It's
Right.
almost
So
all of
maybe
the advisory board.
rethinking even the counselor suite really is a full committee, although it's certain, it's great that a subgroup can focus on it, work, but it's still, the entire committee still has an interest in the counselor suite versus the nursing application. We don't have nursing at TSU. I have no interest in nursing. That's not a committee that I would want to be on. There could be others like that, graduate, nursing,
Right, and that I
scholarship.
was going to suggest, now that you bring that up, is that maybe like the counselor suite, and you mentioned General Applied Texas, and I don't intend to exclude anyone, is that one of those could meet in the morning, maybe 10 to 11:30 with an hour and a half, and
Right.
the other one in the afternoon, and then some of the smaller ones just meet an hour from 9 to 10 to give time to go, so that there'd be like maybe 4 time slots, 2 little ones and 2 longer ones for the broader committees that have a lot of information and a lot of people on their committee.
And what Lee said is if you're only committed to 2 committees, then you've got the flexibility in the morning to do 2 different meetings. So it'd just be a matter
Or
of
even one in the
staggering
morning
them.
and one in the afternoon,
Right.
if that's the way they fall
You
out.
could do 2 subcommittees in the morning from 9 to 10:30, 10:30 to 12. You're done for the day, or the afternoon, same thing.
Yeah.
Or you could stagger it where it includes a lunch if you wanted to do a lunch as well from maybe 10 to 2. That would give you 4 hours plus your hour for lunch, or including the lunch hour to meet as subcommittees. So there's a lot of flexibility in a full day
Yeah.
just to break down into maybe 4 or 5 subcommittees and not 7 like we currently have.
I think so too.
Yeah, and I think I think that's a good idea, and people would, if it's clear who's on the committees, subcommittees, then people who are not on them can feed ideas into that committee, and then the committee as a whole still can discuss everything that was brought up.
What do we want to do moving forward? So,
It's complicated.
so do we want to try to use a whole day to schedule committee meetings and make sure we have some in the morning and afternoon, and then get out a schedule for us maybe before early into December so that everybody can plan? And could we send the subcommittee members, chairs, to email, would it be you, Jane? The coordinating board, before Thanksgiving break, before Thanksgiving, at least by that Wednesday, which is the 26th?
It is, November 26th.
So it gives you at least 2 weeks to decide if you want to meet and kind of have an idea. And then that way, we can work, Margaret and I can work with the staff and come up with an agenda, and then before Christmas, we can send it out and everybody can make their plans accordingly.
Could we have an idea now of what times would be available so that we don't compete with if we all send in an email saying 10:30, how's it going to go back and forth then? So if we can decide now, is it going to be an afternoon or a morning or the full day, perhaps the chairs now can get together. The 4 or 5 of us now can say, look, I'll take 10, I'll take 12, I'll take 2. And then you don't have to wonder, are we competing for the same time? And then we can at least begin to figure out now what time we want to meet. Is it a half day or a full day?
And depending on what we decide, we'll determine if some people need to have a 2-day travel or if they can still keep it at a 1-day travel. Some people can't come in.
Could we maybe ask each of the subcommittee chairs how much time they would like to have, and that could help us do some of that?
As a chair, I would like an hour and a half.
How about Lee? What do you think about for your committee?
I think an hour and a half would work fine.
Michelle?
I don't expect that ours will want to meet.
No?
Okay, because you're probably going to meet by,
I will send an email
okay.
and see if they have an interest in traveling to meet.
The annual Apply Texas workshop, that's Elizabeth and I. What do you think? A couple of hours?
An hour and a half would be
Okay,
good.
an hour and a half for the annual Apply Texas workshop. Common Scholarship app,
If we do a conference call prior to that time, if we even need to meet,
okay.
it probably won't be 45 minutes if we even need to.
Counselor Suite, oh, you already said that. Sorry, Brian. An hour and a half, right? And General Apply Texas. Are we going to merge?
Yeah.
And if we are, we need a. We need to have a motion to do that. And
Are we going to merge your technical committee?
Apply Texas Technical with the general.
That would be my recommendation, especially
Okay.
if we're going to this structure. But that's what I would recommend at this point because it was a very small committee, and I think it is incorporated within the General Applied Texas application.
Motion.
I would like to make a motion that the Applied Texas Technical Committee subcommittee be merged with the General Applied Texas application
Do we have a
subcommittee.
second?
I second it.
Thank you. All those in favor of merging the two committees, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it, so we'll merge them.
So chair is still Melissa Gallion, and co-chair Michelle Walker. Correct?
I think we need
that
like
correct?
2 hours for that one.
I think we at least need at least 2 hours.
For this one.
That one will
Now,
meet.
if we can.
We should schedule this
We
one at
should
the end of the day after everybody's
We should schedule
met.
that in the afternoon.
After
And
everybody's
then that
met.
way, we don't run into any other committee time.
It's a good idea.
I'm sorry, I did not hear about the nurse scholarship, the timeline.
Oh, an hour and a half.
Yeah, so we did this one at the end, then everybody will have had information that may feed into that.
In the graduate one, where we just.
She's phone conference ahead of time.
She does
So
phone
she'll bring
conference ahead
her.
of time. And the scholarship,
Maybe a short
An app.
or a phone conference.
Scholarship.
So we need
45 minutes, or they may not meet at all.
2.
This is just a procedural question for the graduate group. What if we post this? Would you get more input if this was widely advertised and more people could participate with that? If it's going on at the same time and you had more people aware of it? If we're going to do some promotion ahead of time, and they would have an opportunity maybe to participate in the graduate, but they might want to also participate in the nursing. Maybe they, for some reason, I'm just kind of throwing out ideas that having a subcommittee meet here as opposed to a conference call that may be limited in participants, whereas an actual meeting here at the coordinating board may encourage others to attend.
So I wasn't thinking that we were looking to expand the committee. So yes, that definitely would provide. I mean, we had complete participation in our conference call of all the people who were on the subcommittee, but that doesn't mean we can't invite more. So that's, yeah, we can certainly meet if that's the consensus.
In rules that, people outside of this committee
Right.
can participate with the subcommittee.
Yeah,
So
we had several that are not here in this committee, but I'm happy to do that. I just, then I will not hold another conference call. I was trying to be a little efficient
Yes.
with, going ahead and getting ideas going. And since we brought so many ideas today, I wasn't sure that we really had room for a whole lot more, especially in January. So, but I'm happy to meet if that's the recommendation. Happy to do that.
I'm just throwing it out as an option if people were going to be here anyway, that
they may want
Ever
to.
participation you wanted to do ahead of time, and you go ahead and do something as
Sure.
well here?
Sure.
Is that also true of the scholarship group then? Were you planning a meeting on that first day, or were you?
I think if we're going to make this more open and encouraging people to be out there or to participate, then yes, I would want to do the same type of structure and not, because the common scholarship application discussion has been going on for some time now. And the work that I would like to do prior to that time is sending out a survey and possibly doing a conference call, but also still, if we want to have all of the subcommittees represented, I would definitely not want to be one that would be excluded from that, because that has been an initiative that's been going on for some time, not just within over the past couple of years. So yes. But still limit that to either 45 minutes or an hour if we're putting time frame down.
We're now up to an 8-hour day on Monday.
Maybe a day and a half for subcommittees and.
No, I think we can.
Is there overlap on the counselor suite, nursing,
the
and
common
grad?
scholarship from 9 to 10:30, and then from 10:30 to 12 the counselor suite, and maybe at the same time the annual Apply Texas workshop, and then the afternoon 2 to 4, this one, and then everyone just lunch on their own, so we don't have to try to figure out how many people are going to be here.
Because not everybody is going to be on every subcommittee.
No, that's right.
So they're going to be limited. That's going to shorten the day a little bit.
There doesn't appear to be
doesn't really.
overlap on that, Melissa. On the nursing, grad, and scholarship, there does not appear to be much
Yeah.
overlap.
There's not a lot of overlap, so we could do those three at one time, first thing in the morning, 9 to 10:30, and then do the counselor suite 10:30 to noon, and at the same time do the Applied Texas workshop one, because I don't think we'd be competing.
Many of us are on both. The Apply Texas Conference was a big committee.
No, not, oh, the conference. Okay, well then we'll do that one after lunch here. Let me also change that for you. I'm the master of this. That's fine. We think we need maybe 1:30 to, no, 1 to,
1.5 hours?
1 to 2, 2:30
For which one?
for the annual Apply Texas workshop.
Okay.
1 to
Do you think an hour or
2:30.
so now? 2:30, yeah.
And then 2:30 to 4:30 for the big one. How does that look? But we do the common nursing application, the common graduation application, and the common scholarship application from 9 to 10:30, or shorter if the individual groups want it. And then the counselor suite from 10:30 to noon. And then the annual Applied Texas workshop, 1 to 2:30. And then the general Applied Texas application and Applied Texas technical merge, 2:30 to 4:30. Will that work?
If you're doing a few days.
We're doing 2 full days, yes.
Yes.
You should use a full day
Yeah.
in subcommittee.
Then that gives everyone the opportunity to make it to the committees.
Just a question about logistics for the setup of the room then. Once we get past the 9 to 10:30, we'll be meeting as a group in this type of format, correct?
Yeah.
Well, we could, I
We
guess.
could, because it might be easier.
If we want everyone to be able to participate and hear
Yeah.
one another,
Yeah.
this is a good setup for that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
for the
agree.
very last meeting, yes, you're
Okay.
right. I think so.
So what is day 2 going to end up looking like now? Just a lot of committee reports, prioritizing and ranking?
Yes, that would be our biggest agenda item, having that full discussion about the items that we're going to move forward.
An opportunity to shorten it a little bit, or are we going to be here 9 to 3 on day 2?
They'll probably be here because
Yeah,
you're going to come forward from all the different subcommittees. There's going to be feedback with the technical team as to what's difficult, what's not difficult. There's going to be some discussion among the people as to what the priorities are, what's important to them, what's not important, and then the group as a whole is going to have to come up with a list of priorities. I mean, it may not go 9 to 3, but I think we should set that aside so that the group doesn't feel pushed to try to get too much done in a short period of time. Because in the end, we're going to want basically marching orders for the technical team as to here's 10, 15, 20 things we'd like you to do, and here's the order of them.
I hate to keep throwing monkey wrenches in the gears, but one of the logistical issues that you're talking about is trying to ask or come up with priorities when you don't know what any of the elements cost or what any of the elements have a time demand for. In other words, you're building a priority list based on your wish list as opposed to any knowledge as to which ones of these are going to take, half the resources that we have available for programming. And I'm exaggerating, but I don't know how to separate those enough. I mean, how do we even get the list of items from day 1 prepared for day 2 to have as a discussion for everybody? Obviously, we can do that if y'all give us, I don't know how we do that, but we can get a master list put together that evening. But no one will have looked at the master. I mean, you would have heard the discussions if you chose to come for the full day. You still have a lot of decision-making being made with very little time to consider what was concluded in the prior day as suggestions.
I think that's right, and I think in the past there might have been another meeting in between, 2 meetings in the fall instead of just one, to help along with that. But I think we'll just do the best we can with that. Some of it is as a result of the discussions today. We have quite a bit to look at. But you're right. At least given the day before, we've got something to look at for the team as far as what are going to be the major issues, and the team's pretty good at knowing what the major projects are as soon as we hear what they are, versus occasionally there's a surprise here this way or the other. But you're right, the timing is an issue. It's a bigger issue when it's all done in one day. But at least with the day before, we've got a little bit of a heads up to have some time thinking about it. And then with the team here on that day, that can be part of the deliberation as well. Because they'll kick me if I say something's easy. It's not.
And it's my understanding that in the past they've even had a meeting as late as March.
Yes.
And that was kind of on the calendar for a second meeting in the spring.
And the usefulness, if we still need the one in January, we don't want to jettison that one for March, but sometimes there's that extra meeting is, okay, we've just a last minute, maybe something came up or we've having really trouble with this priority 3 item. We need y'all to discuss it because it's turning out to be a lot more complicated than we thought, and we're either told, just do half of it or come up with another solution or kick it to next year or take 2 other things off the priority because we really want that one. And so it's nice to have that extra meeting before it's too late where we still have enough development time to deal with it.
Is it feasible to take what we're talking about as the 2-day January meeting and making it a January meeting and a February meeting instead of March, or January and March? In terms of having time to put this together and have a look at it and get some feedback as to the timeline and such, does that make sense? Or is it better to push them together and then go from there?
Well, the first one's in January. It's like the last week anyway. So if we had one in March, where we get what we consider a final priorities list at the end of January. Then we have another meeting in March. Sometimes that last meeting, if it's the last meeting in the spring, we talk a little bit about the conference and some things like that, but we also kind of have a chance to go over that list one last time in case there are any things we need to talk about. We'll already be in full development mode with the team, but there may be some things where we want some final direction. So I would suggest something, mid-March. It shouldn't be too soon because we might not have discovered what the issues are with the things we've been asked to do. But we don't want it. But if it's late April, people want things in production. They want things ready as soon as possible, so because they've got to change their SISs based on the changes we make.
I will say one of the things that we did, and we were lucky that Tim was sitting at the table with us, but we designated which project would be a major project and which one would be a small project, so that we know that we can only have one or two major projects. And so we knew at least the size of them. We came to nothing with priorities, but I mean,
Are we comfortable with the 2J agenda as it stands now and the time slots? So then Monday, the January 26th, we'll have subcommittee meetings scheduled the entire day. And then on Tuesday, we'll have our Applied Texas Advisory Committee.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'll repeat that. On Monday, January 26th, we'll have our subcommittee work sessions, and we'll have them scheduled throughout the day and according to the schedule that I just shared with you and prior to this. And then on Tuesday, we will have our actual Applied Texas Advisory Committee, where we'll be making recommendations and trying to provide Tim and his team with the prioritized list, which is our main work. Are there any questions or concerns about that? Okay. I think we've done it.
As always, we can, try this out, see how it works, if it works better, or maybe it's just during this time of the year where we have to have these kind of subcommittees the day before we have our general meeting. Could be that that's the only time of the year that we actually have to do that kind of work. Let's see how it works out. I think the work of this committee is so very important, and we have an enormous amount of obligation to the students of the state of Texas and to our colleagues who are reaching out to us to include certain things on the Apply Texas application. So I think our work has just expanded, and so we have an obligation to meet and to do the best job that we possibly can. So I think for this time around, I think we actually do need the 2 days. So we'll just move forward with that and see how we will proceed in the future. But I think we did a great job today. I think we covered a lot of really important issues, even though our subcommittee meetings were shorter today. Again, thank you to everyone for all your hard work. So our next meeting is January 26th and 27th. And did you have a report?
An announcement for us.
An announcement for us, Rebecca?
Okay, yes, I'm glad we've got the meeting date set, and I'm glad that Jane Caldwell participated a great deal in the discussion today, because this is the end of my participation with Apply Texas. Apply Texas as a function has moved to a different division, away from academics and workforce to student success and access. Is that college readiness? Okay. So, and Jane has actually moved divisions within the coordinating board, so she's having a double move there, and she's going to be your liaison. So I am sad to leave. I've enjoyed, it's been a tough learning curve, and I've enjoyed working with all of you and learning as much as I did, and you were all, any of you who I've interacted with in conversation and email have been very helpful to me, and I truly appreciate that. And I do have appreciation of how important this committee is, and that you are a working committee. You come out with action plans that are implemented to improve things for Texas students. So it's been my privilege to work with the group, and I know that I call Jane the TACRO superstar. So you are very fortunate to have someone who is so well versed in student issues, and I know she'll do a great job. Thank you.
Well, and on behalf of the Applied Texas Advisory Committee, we want to thank you so much for all the work that you've done. It was just this year that I had an opportunity to work with you, but I know there are others on the committee who have been working with you for a much longer period of time, and so I've only heard great things, and so we're very grateful to you for all your hard work. Want to add anything?
Other than no, just to thank you. I know you worked real hard to get us up and running this year, and so we appreciate that you transitioned quickly over to us, and we appreciate that we've been able to get going, much earlier this year and able to have actually 2 fall meetings. That's been a real plus for us. We do appreciate that.
I'd just like to add how much I've enjoyed working with Rebecca, and also to just second what you were just saying, that she's done an amazing job, I think, during a time of quite a bit of transition here at the board, and keeping this committee moving forward and keeping our cycle moving forward has been really, really good. Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much, and unless there are any other questions or concerns, anything else? All right, then then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, and have safe travels.
Thank you.